Look at all of these chocolate coins. Wouldn't it be great if this was real money? But who doesn't love chocolate? Do you guys want some chocolate?
Yes.
Before I started my speech, these kids didn't have any chocolate money, much like the situation happening in our schools across the United States. But the kids in our schools don't have enough real money. Many schools don't have enough funding to cover all their expenses, or they're trying to figure out how to split a handful of chocolate coins among 500 students. Many students and schools don't have access to up-to-date STEM resources, highly qualified and well-paid teachers, and mental health counseling. And all of these issues stem from one root cause: underfunding. One of the biggest problems is the lack of proper technology, like computers, tablets, or the internet to support updated learning methods. Investments in EdTech are expected to balloon as high as $132 billion by 2032. However, even as the industry surges forward, there are many under-resourced communities where the infrastructure for technology simply just doesn't exist. In 2024, Congress also cut $500 million from the U.S. education budget. That leaves students without the access they need to technology too. Can you believe it? While the rest of the world is surging forward, we're taking away the tools that can help our students keep up. It's hard to accept the fact that even in 2024, students are still being held back because their schools can't afford the basic tools that are now deemed essential for learning. But it's not just the lack of technology. Many teachers, who are the people who shape our future, are left with non-competitive salaries and often end up looking for other jobs. Last year, there are over 55,000 K-12 teacher vacancies, which has led to a critical teacher shortage. That also led to a high student-to-teacher ratio. For example, my English class last year had more than 35 students crammed into a small classroom that was designed for only up to 30 students. They had to transfer some students out of the class, but the class size was still over the limit. So my teacher had to bring in a standing desk with tall stools shoved into the corner of the classroom. Luckily, I had a regular seat, but my classmates who had to sit back there found it more hard to focus in class. Unfortunately, teacher shortages can also lead to the teaching content based on standardized testing as opposed to a more comprehensive and engaging instruction a highly qualified teacher is trained to do. My math teacher highlighted this concern, sharing that in her years of teaching AP Calculus, she has always faced the dilemma of choosing whether to teach a real calculus class or to teach the AP Calculus tests that we would take in May. While she truly wants to provide problem-solving skills and real-world application, she feels significant pressure from students and parents to ensure good performance on the AP test. And without the funding for proper training, teachers will continue to lack the skills and confidence they need to balance the curriculum so they can avoid teaching to the test. What's worse is that many students feel that the only thing that matters in school is the score they receive on a test. It's devastating to know that only 48% of schools say they can effectively provide mental health support to their students. That leaves 25 million students left navigating their own life's challenges without the support they deserve. But it's not just the lack of mental health counseling. As of August, there have been 133 school shootings, leaving 38 people dead and 81 others injured. Once a semester at my school, we practiced how to build a blockade, turn off all the lights, shut all the windows, and find where the best place to hide from an active shooter is. While most of the time students feel that this practice is unnecessary, someone actually showed up on our school last year with a weapon and we had to go into lockdown. Luckily, the situation was dealt with quickly and no one got hurt, but students like me shouldn't have to sit through classrooms with the constant anxiety worrying whether our school might be next. It not only affects our well-being, but our ability to focus in class. So unless something is done now about these funding issues for the public schools, the consequences will be catastrophic. But like when I shared my chocolate coins with the kids, there's a fairly simple solution to this problem: taxing the super rich. The aggregate wealth of America's 806 top billionaires have hit a record of $5.8 trillion. That makes them richer than half of the US population combined. However, their average effective tax rate is far lower than what the average American citizen pays. The billionaires are taxed mostly on long-term capital gains, like stocks, and these payments are only taxed up to 20%. On the other hand, Americans who fall under the middle and lower tax income brackets can get taxed up to 37%. That's a huge difference. A survey from Pew Research Center also shows that 83% of Americans think that big businesses and corporations don't pay enough in taxes. So here's my proposal: the EduBoost tax.
Yes.
What would happen if we could just tap in a small portion of these annual incomes from the super rich families? Now I'm talking really big numbers here. The top 1% of Americans have an annual income of $600,000. The top 0.1%, or 1/10%, have an annual income of $3 million. And the top 0.01%, or 1/100%, have an annual income of $32 million. So I found out what the potential contribution each of these income brackets could provide to school funding based on taking a small upward scaling percentage of their annual incomes. For the 1% bracket, I tax 0.1% of their income to result in $600 per year. I multiplied that by the number of households in the tax bracket, and you result in $780 million a year. That's a lot of money. Let's use the same formula for the other ones. For the 0.1% bracket, I tax 0.15% of their income to result in $4,950. Multiply that by 130,000 households, and you result in $643 million. And for the 1/100% bracket, I tax 0.2% of their income to result in $20,000 per year. Multiply that by 13,000 households, and you result in $832 million. In total, these tiny supplemental taxes can result in creating an additional $2.255 billion. Okay, I know, this can be a lot to soak in, so let me put this into perspective for you. In my bowl, there are approximately 150 chocolate coins. Let's just say I take out 0.2% of the chocolate coins out. That's the highest tax rate I created for the 1/100% group. Taking out 0.2% of a billionaire's income is equivalent to only taking 1/3 of a chocolate coin out of this whole bowl of 150. To make this tax increase easier for taxpayers, these payments will be collected on a quarterly basis and then be distributed to each state based on their individual budgets from the United States Department of Education. The state and federal government will then have to work together to ensure there's transparency and accountability throughout the process. And then Congress will have to pass this tax change. And in order to do that, everyday American voters, like all of you watching, will have to encourage our elected officials to put our needs over the needs of big corporations and wealthy individuals. The official 2024 fiscal budget summary by the U.S. Department of Education currently allocates just over $2.5 billion to teachers, school resources, and school security. EduBoost tax can create an additional, as you can see, $2 billion to these critical issues even more. Together, we can bring classrooms to the 21st century and provide every student with a tablet or computer for school. We can pay teachers, at the very least, a livable wage so that highly qualified individuals stay in the profession. We can ensure all schools have access to security personnel so that we can protect our students physically and emotionally. But let me make this clear. This idea isn't about shaking down the billionaires or making them the bad guys. We're just adjusting the imbalance in their tax system. Critics will argue that this is unfair targeting, but it's actually far from that. We're not taking away their wealth. We're redistributing it so that it benefits all 345 million Americans rather than just 1 million of them. The ultra-rich will still have their yachts, they'll still have their mansions and expensive cars, but the schools will be getting the resources they need to build a brighter future. So, like when I shared my chocolate coins with the kids, the ultra-rich can do the same for our schools. Thank you.